Hello and welcome back to the Down to the Wire podcast. We're back after a week off. Here to talk about the upcoming Grand Prix. I'm not going to say the full name because it's long and I'm not Italian, so I can't pronounce it. But yeah, it's Imola. We're back at Imola for the first time in 2021. I guess technically it's not because we were at the end of last season, but still, first time this season. Jack, how you doing?
I am good. Did we have Imola in 2021 last season? I thought it finished in 2020. But either way, really looking forward to the race this weekend.
Oh, we did. Yeah, you're right.
I'm one of those people who likes the technicals. But yeah, looking forward to this weekend.
Why did I think we'd had Imola at the start? It's only March.
Yeah, no. We've only had one race this year. We are craving another race and dreaming of the past times, the good times when the Formula 1 season was in full swing.
You can tell I've had a week off because immediately I've made an error there. There we are.
I flagged it.
Right, well, you flagged it. You did flag it. Perhaps we should have done a test run of this, but there we are. Right, should we just dive straight in?
Let's do it.
Let's dive straight in. Preview Imola Grand Prix 2021. The first one and only one in 2021.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess Imola not normally a track that's on the calendar, as in we had it last year because of COVID stuff. We've got it again because of COVID stuff, and I think, was it China that was cancelled, or one of the races was cancelled?
China,
this is kind of
it was definitely China. I don't know if it's cancelled or postponed. It may return later on in the season. But,
right, okay. But that's why Imola's kind of slotted in now, is it?
I think it's why it's slotted in. I don't know if they've added it as an extra because of China or if it was scheduled to go ahead anyway, which is why we've had 3 weeks between the races. But
I know.
All the same, I'm glad it's here because it's another exciting circuit.
Well, that's a classic, isn't it? I guess we'll come on to this a little bit later, but that 3-week gap makes for... I don't know, it's almost like we've had like another mini off-season, really, isn't it?
Yeah, we have mentioned in the past that a lot of teams hide their speed during testing so that nobody knows who's on top, nobody knows who to copy, in a sense, with their cars. And that's only a 2-week gap between testing and the start of the season, and now we've got a 3-week gap between race 1 and race 2. So, by all accounts, if everybody knew Red Bull had the best car, they've had basically 5 to 6 weeks to work on it and copying it. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens this weekend in regards to changes in performance.
Race pace. We'll discuss a little bit of that later, but we'll stick to the track for the moment. I guess in terms of, if you're comparing it to Bahrain, it's a very, I say very different. It's a bit different, and you've got, perhaps it's like Bahrain is quite straight, high speed, isn't it? Whereas at Imola you've got a bit more of a mixture at least.
Yeah, like if you went on a scale from fast circuits with loads of straight line speed to really bendy circuits like Monaco, this probably features on the more bend. Well, you know what? Actually, it probably lends itself closer to Bahrain in terms of speed, but that's only because...
Well, yeah, if you're comparing it to Monaco, yes.
Because it carries the speed into corners a lot more and it's a lot more fluid. But in terms of overtaking, maybe it does lend itself more to Monaco.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see how we get on because, it's not the widest of circuits, is it, Imola?
Not by any means. 14 metres average throughout the entire circuit. That does put it on the narrower side. I did find a table which had a couple of circuits. They're really sporadic. I don't know how they were selected in a sense, but they found track width and max width of all the circuits. Well, all of the circuits in this study, but it was on the lower half of circuit sizes. But I guess that was similar to what we were saying last season with the circuits that were sort of COVID circuits, ones which were being reintroduced. They were a lot narrower than the more classic, more recent Formula 1 circuits, and that definitely, I think, will play a role in the strategies for this weekend.
Yeah, the thing is as well, I feel like the track being so narrow is kind of exacerbated by the width of the cars as well, because obviously this kind of mini era, I guess, of cars, they have been...
Well, yeah.
It's been noted that they're very wide.
Yeah, the Formula 1 car pushes on close to 2 metres in width now, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, you consider 2 Formula 1 cars side by side, that's 4 of the 4 of the 14 meters average of a track width.
Yeah.
It's like 10 meters is not a lot for a Formula 1 car to play with around any circuit,
No,
especially one with more speed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I guess the thing is as well, as in, not only are these cars notoriously wide, they're known for being very difficult to stay behind cars in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it would be one thing if you could follow cars easily, as in I think you could probably find opportunities, but because it's so narrow, it's almost like you kind of get close to a person, you wait for a gap or an opportunity, and then it's like, oh, I got to drop back because my car's overheating.
Yeah. You see, that's the thing. I feel like that's definitely an element to a race which often goes undiscussed in a sense, is, as you were saying, the heat of the car. Like, we've seen it, we saw it in, I can't remember which of the circuits it was last year, but it was the one with the particularly long straight where there was a big crash on one of the safety car laps because where the start line was particularly far down the straight. I can't remember what circuit it was, but on...
Oh, I can't think of the name of it. It was one of the ones that was in Italy.
It might have been the other one, it might have been Mugello.
Yeah, that's it, Mugello.
Yeah, but I forgot where my point was, actually, if I'm honest. I got so off beam in terms of onto the other circuit. Can you remember what I was talking about?
You said long straight DRS zone starts, or well,
before that,
starts.
I forgot what my point was.
You said everyone crashed into each other.
Yeah, before that.
I don't know. I don't know.
I've completely lost my train of thought there. That's really annoying. You know, you just go fully into it and you just slightly lost it. Anyway, you continue.
But yeah, I mean, I guess, will we see perhaps a little bit more overtaking this year? I mean, I guess there's an element to which, like, even though it's a classic circuit, Imola, you've probably got a lot of drivers who wouldn't have driven on that circuit before, and particularly not in the current generation of Formula 1 car.
Yeah. The car. Yes, cars overheat, tyres and all that. That was the element I was talking about. Yeah, it's underreported in a sense. Cars do suffer from being behind other cars. You do notice it more and more.
Yeah.
And another element was what Mercedes seemed to suffer with last year was tyre degradation. Tyre degradation has always been a factor in Formula 1, but with the way that, in a sense, the teams and fans as well, they sort of complain that you don't want a race to be based and won completely on tyres and... tyres exploding all over the place. But at the same time, you don't want teams to have what will most likely happen this weekend, just be able to survive an entire race on 1 or 2 sets of tyres and just go it. So yeah, it would be interesting to see how those factors in particular play a role in this weekend, because it could be the race for the purists where there's not a lot of strategy involved and it is going to come down to just race pace.
Well, I mean, hopefully now that the drivers have been there last season, they'll have a bit more confidence to kind of, be like, right, that's a place where I can go for it. That's a place where I can't.
Familiarity, almost, yeah.
Yes, and I do think there's an element to which, the fact Imola is now at the very start of this season compared to being pretty much, I think it was like a couple of races towards the end.
Yeah.
It was, and I think I'm right in saying that was the race where Mercedes won the Constructors.
It wouldn't surprise me because they were 1-2 that race, and that was the race Verstappen crashed out.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure they won the Constructors, and then not long after, Hamilton won the driver championship. So I guess at that point, it wasn't completely gone, but I guess there's not quite as much motivation to kind of push on and take risks. When like from Hamilton's point of view, he's like, well, I've only got to win like 1 more race or 2 more races or whatever it was. And then the other driver's point of view is like, well, realistically, if I go for something here now, it's over immediately. So it's that kind of tricky situation. Whereas now, we're 1 race in, the start of the season, this is where you kind of want to, like particularly for Red Bull, after being so good through pre-season, qualify on pole and then to not win in Bahrain, for them now it's kind of like, right, we need to go and need to go and get the win now.
The emphasis is definitely
hopefully...
on Red Bull to improve, considering that I do think the majority of people would probably think they have the best car now, based off of the first weekend for sure. So when you're coming away from a race weekend without the win, I think all eyes are on you in a sense to say it's not on the driver, I don't think, and it's not on the car because they did a stellar job. It's on the team at that point, so it'd be interesting to see how that works.
Well, I mean, it's tricky to see how this race is going to go. It could end up being a strategy race again, which, as we saw last week, can be equally as I say last week, almost a month ago. Last race, I should say. As in that can be almost as exciting as watching overtake after overtake. So I guess we'll have to see what happens. So I'm just trying to see what we've got here now.
Strategy. Well, really, staying on the track element of things, the circuit has changed this year. Not in terms
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
The actual routes, but the DRS detection zone and activation zone. So last year, there is I won't call it a hairpin, it's 2 left-handers in a row prior to the only straight on the circuit and the only DRS activation point on the circuit. But that has changed this year. There is still only one DRS zone, but the activation point is earlier on the straight to, in a sense, encourage more overtaking because it's easier to overtake with more DRS available to you. But also the detection point, the point where you have to be within a second of the car in front, has also been moved. So whereas last year the detection point was straight after the 2 left-handers and it was right at the start of the straight, and then the activation point of the DRS was, say, a couple hundred meters up ahead. Instead, they've moved the activation point earlier on the straight, so to get, as I was saying before, a longer DRS section. But also they've put the detection point 2 turns before the straight. And that'll be interesting to see how that works on the weekend. I mean, I'm all for this increased DRS zone because, to be fair, the last time last year when we went to Imola, it wasn't the most entertaining of races in terms of duels because it, as we were saying before, with the width of the track, it isn't an easy place to overtake on. No. But because of this new detection zone, I think it will be interesting to see what happens there. Because it's right before a turn, like literally, it's almost on the turn. It is so close to the turn. And in a sense, for those that are ahead, if you're trying to make sure that you keep that 1 second advantage, you might be going a bit deep into that turn, which will compromise you going out of the next and into the next and onto the straight, which means you could be even worse on the straight if somebody else gets in that activation zone. But if you're the car trying to catch, you also may be braking a bit late as well. And it will be a test of the skill of the drivers to see if they can brake as late as they can and still control a car into that turn. Because if they gamble a little bit and get it wrong, you're either going onto the sand, you're going into a wall, and then your car's out of the race and you're really compromised. You're never going to catch anybody at that rate. So I think the inclusion of these changes to the activation and the detection point could be good to sort of find the metal of who's a good driver and who's perhaps just in a good car.
Yeah, I mean, it'll certainly change the dynamic on it, and I mean, it's like you said, as in the fact that the DRS, you get the benefit of the DRS for a little bit longer, is always a good thing. Always going to encourage more overtaking. I guess we'll see whether it. DRS is always a tricky one because it's a kind of artificial overtake encouragement tool.
It's a false gain in a sense. You have no real right to get DRS. It's just the fact that because Formula 1 is so much more about aerodynamics now than it was in the past, whereas before it was all about engines and no one. I'm sure they did to an extent look at the aero side of things because you have to, because you look for every marginal gain you can. But maybe not to the extent of nowadays where a second can separate the top 10. You know what I mean? That is the sort of margins they're playing with now. So in a sense, this DRS is something that does play a massive part in modern day Formula 1.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess we'll have to see, you know, what that means in practice. I guess based off the last Grand Prix as well, they've also made some minor tweaks to the circuit, again, not to the actual layout, but they've kind of put like mini speed bumps on the kind of inside and outside of corners in relation to track limits. Because obviously, as we discussed on the last the last podcast where we were talking about in Bahrain, drivers kind of being liberal with the track limits, the FIA not being clear on the regulations. It sounds like they've very much gone for a hardline approach in relation to Imola. So I think there's going to be a very low tolerance. Sorry, I was trying to think then. A low tolerance in terms of benefiting from track, going over the track limits.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the first time we've seen this. I think a couple of years back in, I think it was Kota, where I think it was Verstappen overtook Kimi Räikkönen off the track to finish, I think it was like second or third maybe. And then after the race, they reviewed it and they were like, no, they're going to have to swap them back around.
Oh, yeah,
and then they
put... It was up the inside almost, wasn't it? Where
yeah, and they put sausage curbs that many humorous Formula One fans called for stoppers. And I guess they're effective. I guess it's even though you're probably going to have drivers trying to cut the corner to a certain extent, just purely on the fact that it's like if you go over those, you're probably going to damage the car.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of wards drivers away from it, I guess.
And I guess in a way, the cars that have the biggest issue of suspension is usually Mercedes, and they were the ones that fell the most foul of cutting the corner in Bahrain. So it would be interesting to see how that affects. I mean, he cut it 29 times. I've seen a video showing them all. It was ridiculous. It's only like a 50-yard lap race.
He did, but I would also like to see how many times Verstappen cut it, because I think you'll find that, okay, it may not be 29, but I think, it was a good chunk of time where, Red Bull said, oh, Mercedes are cutting the corner, do it until we get told to stop. And it was a good number, it was probably, I would say, at least a third of the race. So, I don't think, I think Mercedes took advantage of the fact that the regulations were vague. Red Bull then also took advantage. I mean, in terms of the cars as well,
But when it's coming down to 0.7 a second at the end of the race, those couple of laps that Hamilton's exceeding that limit, just that little inch.
Well, Red Bull should have been more savvy then, shouldn't they? As in, Mercedes got onto it and they got away with it for a while.
Bad will, though?
Yeah, it is. No, it's not. It's savvy. As in, the regulations said, as long as you don't gain a lasting advantage. If Mercedes had tried it once, and then the FIA had said, right, you can't do that, then Mercedes wouldn't have done it. Mercedes did it once, they thought, well, we haven't been told off, we'll do it again.
I know what you mean. I get what you mean there, but I think savvy is DAS, because there's nothing in the rule book about DAS. So they went, that's savvy, let's do that. And no one can complain because there's nothing in the rule book about moving your steering wheel around. But I do think, it's almost a sportsman's act. Well, I mean, in a sense, you do have to take every advantage. And if you go wide, you go wide. You can't help it. But if you're not making a concerted effort to correct yourself without having to have somebody intervene on, other drivers' behalves to suggest that perhaps you shouldn't be doing that, I don't think it's good-natured in a way. Like, I don't think you see it in many other sports. I mean, maybe when you think of Italy in the Six Nations before, where they'd enter a scrum and they try and get all of their players out, so it meant nobody was in the scrum, and then it allows them to run around the side. It's like, yeah, okay, you can do that, but I think it's almost a commonly accepted notion that nobody's going to go out of their way to infringe on the rules in such a way.
But then this is what we were saying before, as in, if the FIA had said, don't exceed track limits...
The fault is with the FIA, 100%. But I don't think that it should be the responsibility of the FIA in all circumstances to... Because otherwise you go into the minutiae of every little detail.
Well, that's part of Formula One, unfortunately. Formula One,
I mean, you
as a
look at
sport,
football,
is
players walk
it's
up a
about
little
looking
bit
at the
for a throw-in.
regulations. It's about looking at the regulations, finding the gaps, and exploiting them. That is what Formula One is all about. There's always stuff like this in Formula One. I'm just trying to think now.
Yeah.
You had Brawn with the double diffuser. You had Red Bull with the flexi front wing. You had Mercedes last season with the DAS. You know, part of the parcel of Formula One is those kind of fine margins and trying to find tenths of a second. I mean, look, if you go in on morals, as in, for me, if you go in based on like, oh well, it's not kosher, then Red Bull shouldn't have done it either, but they did. So as in, Mercedes aren't the first team to have done something like that, and they certainly won't be the last. But I guess what I was going to come to was, in terms of the bumps on the curbs, there's the potential that in terms of car damage, it'll actually impact the high rake cars more than the low rake, because obviously at the front, at the front of the car, you're much closer to the ground, aren't you? Because that's how it kind of works. So you're more likely to damage with the high rake. You're probably more likely to damage the front at the initial kind of bumping over the curb.
Oh, so the FIA are helping Mercedes once again.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is this. I think the argument would be is that in both scenarios, you probably shouldn't bump over a mini speed bump in a Formula One car.
No. Do you think though a mini speed bump is enough? Like, I don't think you even need to have a mini speed bump. I just think they need to be stricter. In a sense, just go, no, you can't. You've got 3 chances. Like, they do that in most circuits. You exceed those track limits 3 times, you're going to get, apparently.
I think it's quite a clever way of doing it, because I think, if you say, I agree with you, I think they just need to be stricter. I think that's one thing they need to do. But I think by having, like, the physical element, as in, like, it will damage your car...
Yeah.
Immediately then, drivers don't think, oh, I'll push this as wide as I can to gain this much extra time. They think, oh, no, I need to stay within the limits here, otherwise I'm going to snap my suspension or clip my front wing or
maybe
do lasting damage.
Maybe just put a bollard there. Something that is permanent obstacle. You touch that bollard, you rip off your front wing, mate.
I mean, that's potentially life-threatening, so maybe not.
Maybe not.
But no, I agree with you. To be honest with you, I think they should go for a combination of... The physical thing of like we said, the speed bump, and just being and it's like we said last time, there's an element which they probably need to be a bit stricter on it, but at the same time just be clearer on it.
Yeah.
As in, I don't understand why they did it last time around, changing it between sessions, qualifying and the race. It's just baffling. So if they just need to pick this stance and just go with it. Mm-hmm.
Can I say, interesting fact on Brawn, as you mentioned then. Do you know they only had 3 bodies of their car for the season they won championship? That baffled me the other day when I read that. Because I was like, if they had more than one serious accident, they wouldn't have had 2 cars finishing the entire season.
Well, as in, they were formerly Honda, I believe.
All right.
Brawn, and Honda were dreadful, as in, and like financially they were struggling as well. Mm-hmm. Which is why Ross Brawn took them over, and eventually Brawn became Merc.
I was just shocked by that. I just thought I had to throw it out there because I thought that was a fact.
It's interesting as well, because if you follow the trajectory of that season, Brawn had an absolutely fantastic start, and then basically as soon as everyone kind of clocked onto their double diffuser thing, which was gaining them all of the grip, the results for the rest of the season weren't actually that good. Anyway, that's just kind of a side note. Yeah. So, well, I guess we'll see what happens with the speed bumps. And on that note, I do think there's an element which drivers should be a little bit more... I guess maybe this is kind of going back to what you were saying about, taking advantage. Perhaps they just need to be a little bit more responsible.
I don't think anyone applauds a driver for winning... if they were to cheat it. What I mean by that, not saying that, no one's applauding Hamilton for his performance, because it was a phenomenal race, and he really did battle to win that. And, and as you were saying, you do have to take every advantage you can. I mean, whether you should on some is a bit more debatable. But in a sense, no one's congratulating a football team that wins by... no one congratulates Argentina on beating England when Maradona handballed the ball into the goal. It's like, you can get away with that if no one spots it, but you shouldn't. You know what I mean? It's one of those really, no one's no one's congratulating a false winner in a way. But at the same time, they did fully deserve to win that race because they had the best.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you can put their win solely down to the advantage they took there. I guess we'll see what happens. If the race is good enough, could we see Imola return for another season?
Oh, wow.
Who knows?
To be fair, I like the circuit if it was a bit wider. But also, do you think we need 2 Italian Grand Prix? Like, one of the things I quite like about Formula 1 is that you go country to country. But when you have multiple in the same place, you don't think it tarnishes the reputation?
Well, I mean, for a while they had the Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona, and then they had the European Grand Prix in Valencia, I believe.
Oh yeah.
So they did used to have 2 in on the same continent, I guess.
Well, wasn't the Valencia one the European Grand Prix at that stage? And then, yeah,
it was. Yeah. So you had Spanish Grand Prix and European Grand Prix.
I guess that was their only way they could really spin that.
Well, yeah, and it's like if you the name for the Imola race is absolutely redonkulous. There's like 3 lines of Italian
gobbledygook. But then Monza retains the Italian Grand Prix.
Yeah, so they're the Italian Grand Prix.
The Cathedral of Speed.
I mean, I don't have any problem with having 2 in Italy. I kind of get what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, perhaps they should look at other options in different countries before saying yes. We'll stick with 2 in Italy. But I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. Who knows?
To be fair, especially when you look at America, they've been craving to get that Miami Grand Prix for a while, and that one looks a little bit more on the cards than ever before. But they've already got one in. Is it Austin? In Texas?
Yeah.
So, but in a sense, I guess with America, it's almost like you've got 50 different countries. Those states are so different. So I wouldn't mind it as much there. It almost is expected it's that Americana.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing is as well, as in because of the American ownership, I think they're trying to of Formula 1. I mean, they're trying to push
it's where the money is, America to gain. Does it make more?
Yes.
If you're going to pick a circuit, do you want it in Antarctica or do you want it in America? So you're going to pick America because it's going to get you more money. At the end of the day, it's like
it's all about the money.
Yeah. So that is what it is. Although I tell you what, wouldn't it be awesome to see the grip levels on a tyre in Antarctica? It would just be skin all over the place. That'd just be so funny.
Well, look at the damage that was done in the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit last season when it was a little bit chilly.
Yeah.
So
that was an awesome Grand Prix. That
it was a good Grand Prix.
Anyway, the race.
The race itself, yeah. I mean, it's weird because we've had, like you said, we've had the one race, but the gap between race 1 and race 2 is longer than the gap between pre-season testing and
race 1.
And race 1, yeah. And I guess all of the little, the teams have had a chance now to see where the cars are at exactly. Like for example, you had AlphaTauri with the crazy high rake setup that appeared to be doing well for them. Do some of the teams perhaps a little bit lower down the grid think, oh, we'll adopt that because I guess rake is, it's not necessarily fabrication of parts or changing of bodywork or anything like that. I mean, outside of regulations, just in terms of, the length of time it takes to do that sort of thing. I guess, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs, but I would think it would be one of the easier things you could do. Yeah, I mean, the big question is going to be Red Bull and Mercedes, isn't it?
Yeah, they're going to be 1-2. I don't know if there's any doubt about that. Even if it isn't Verstappen Hamilton.
But it's which order, though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think it very much similar to Monaco because of the difficulty to overtake on this circuit. I do think whoever gets pole is going to win this race.
Pole is king.
I mean, last year that didn't happen. Bottas got pole, Hamilton won, but Hamilton only really won that race on the basis that Bottas pitted first because he got preferential treatment because he was the driver in first, and then a safety car came out, which meant Hamilton could then pit under the safety car and then came out ahead, which was beyond helpful for him. But I do think this is going to be a circuit for the pole position. I don't think you're going to see anything like Perez from last week, where he has a little bit of car trouble on the,
and then works his way to fifth. Yeah,
that's not going to happen this week. It's just
no,
there's not enough opportunities to overtake. I mean, maybe we're wrong. Maybe that DRS zone is going to completely flip the switch on what happens and the different detection point, but it's going to be tough for anybody really to keep up with the Mercedes and the Red Bull in this race, I think.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully we can get 2 Red Bull versus 2 Mercedes as well. I think it's worth saying that. As in, I think that was one of the things that was not disappointed about last race, because obviously it was nobody's fault, but as in it was one of those ones where it was like, you wonder what could have been if Perez was up there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of how interesting the race is. It'll be interesting to see I think, based off race weekend 1, despite the fact that Mercedes got the win, I think we can say that Red Bull have the best car.
Yep.
So have Mercedes managed to kind of close the gap up to Red Bull? Have Red Bull managed to kind of keep that advantage? We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
To be honest, I think one of the key things we're going to find out this weekend is how much time Mercedes were gaining on the straights in Bahrain, because I think despite the Red Bull car being the quicker of the two, it was more apparent that the Red Bull was quicker in Sector 2 in Bahrain, which is the more windy section of the circuit. And, I mean, Bahrain is pretty much 50% straights, because, that's the layout of the circuit. But Imola is nowhere near the same. I mean, even their straight has got the odd kink in it here and there. I think this will be the real moment where Red Bull can show what they have and go, yeah, this is what we're playing with. We are gonna win some few races this year.
I think that personally, I think the Red Bull power unit right now is probably better than Merc.
Oh wow, really?
But I think it's a case of the difference between the power unit and the Merc and the Red Bull is minimal compared to the difference between the aero and the grip in the twistiest action. So I think if you probably looked at the timings, as in even in the straightest sections, Red Bull were probably still gaining time on Merc, but they were probably just gaining an awful lot more in the twistiest sections.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the last time we had Imola, Verstappen was keeping up with the Mercedes. I mean, he overtook Bottas at one stage, which, to be fair, on a circuit like that where there was, overtakes were at a premium, that was quite impressive to overtake anybody, let alone a Mercedes. Maybe this could be a total wipeout for Red Bull, and they really could do something special, because the fact they were able to keep up last year.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because, the Mercedes that we saw at race 1 was probably, in terms of the car, it was probably the worst Mercedes car we've seen. And that's by their own lofty standards, really. So you'd have to assume that on paper they're only going to get better. I guess it's a case of how much better. How much better? Is that the right English? I don't know.
I think
how much of an improvement? We'll go with that. How much of an improvement Mercedes are going to make relative to Red Bull? Have Mercedes perhaps sacrificed a bit of speed for being able to run behind cars for longer? As in, that was one of the big foibles of the Merc last season, was that when he was out in front, it was almost unstoppable. But as soon as it was stuck behind another car, they really seemed to have
maybe that's why they're slower this year, because the only time we've seen the pace really on show is during qualifying and practice, where there's no real turbulence from a car in front, because it just isn't. So perhaps this is where we see them actually be able to consistently keep up with the Red Bull. I mean,
perhaps they've accepted that Red Bull will have caught up, because I guess for Mercedes they've almost had the double hit of losing the DAS, and they've they've said the regulations affects the low rate cars more than the high rate, doesn't it? So perhaps Mercedes have conceded, look, we're not going to be anywhere close to where we were in terms of how far ahead of Red Bull we were last season. So perhaps we do need to make a car, okay, we'll sacrifice a bit of speed, but at least we can run behind Red Bull for the majority of, a reasonable amount of time without them to, swing out to the slipstream and then drop back in. I think it was Monza last year. It was just ridiculous. Like they were coming down the back straight.
No, that was why I mentioned Mugello. Because on the straight, they were constantly dip and diving out of the car. I could not remember what the link was. That was the link. Mercedes kept dipping out of the slipstream,
because the
meaning
car was
they're going to go
overheating.
slower, but they were cooling down the car. Anyway, continue.
So there's a lot of things to consider there. It is really an unknown. It's very unknown. And the thing is that, I can't remember a time where we've had a 3-week gap between race 1 and race 2.
No.
And equally, I can't remember a time where Mercedes weren't the quickest car going into the second race of the season. So,
yeah, well, to be fair,
we'll have to wait and see.
Over 3 weeks, they may have been able to do quite a lot, in a sense. I mean,
but then Red Bull might have done as well.
Oh, yeah, of course, yes. But,
that's the thing, isn't it? So
yeah, that is always all I've been thinking is Mercedes can... Like, in a sense, though, when you're benchmarking against anybody, you see what they do, you copy it to get to that. But for Red Bull, there's nothing really to benchmark against because they are the best, in a sense. When you're at that stage, you are a little bit more limited.
In this scenario, you'd rather be the chasing team than the team being chased.
Absolutely. Do you think, with Bottas and Perez, do you think this could almost be a changing of the guard as to the Constructors' Championship? Because we didn't see it last week. Who's going to finish third? Well, in a sense, yes, because I don't think anybody thinks Bottas or Perez is going to be able to keep up with Verstappen and Hamilton.
Not all the time, no.
But in a sense, a change of the guard, because if you're first and third, or even second and third every week, you're going to win the Constructors. Now, last week, Bottas did get third, but that was because of the issues to Perez's car. And maybe that is going to affect Red Bull's Constructors' chances, is the reliability. Because I think we did see a few times. I mean, I think Verstappen alone retired 5 times last season. So clearly there was. I mean, I think it was even in Imola last season that he had an engine trouble, which just cut out the car, stopped him from even braking, and then he just ploughed into the sand. But do you think this could be the race where, in a sense, Red Bull say, yeah, we are not only got the best driver, that's if they think they have the best driver, but also we got the best team, in a sense, because Perez is going to overtake Bottas.
It could be. That's what we really need. That's what's going to be interesting to find out this weekend. We've seen now that the Red Bull, as a car, they've produced a very good package that can clearly take it to Mercedes. What we need to see now is, have they got 2 drivers that can take it to both of the Mercedes cars? And I guess this is where, at points where you've said last season, oh, well, surely they can get someone better than Bottas. And I've kind of turned around and gone, well, Hamilton generally finishes first, followed by Bottas. At which point, for Mercedes, you're like, well, why would you change it? You're locking out the first 2 positions. But
in a situation like this where you haven't got the best car, you need that second driver.
Well, and this is where, if Perez is consistent, even if Hamilton is winning, and then, like you're having Verstappen followed by Perez, and then you've got Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez, and then you've got Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton. If Bottas isn't consistently in the top 3,
Mercedes can't rely on Hamilton to win every race anymore.
Yeah, that's why Mercedes needs to look at it and go, right, well, Bottas isn't getting us in the top 3. We need to kind of look at alternatives, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, but that's to say that when Perez and Bottas come up against each other, it'll be interesting to see. Yes, Perez has had some outstanding individual performances, but, when... And I'm not taking away from the performance he had last race, because it was clearly very good. But is there an element to which, as in Perez had nothing to lose?
No, yeah.
He had absolutely nothing to lose. So I guess he was just throwing caution to the wind. It's a very different scenario when you kind of start, say, 5th, and you're having to try and work your way up into the top 3, and it's not quite
more
as
patient. You're looking for your opportunities.
Exactly.
You can't just fling it.
And it's fine margins then. So
Perez is probably shredding those tyres. I mean, I think he pitted 4 times by the end. Something nuts like that. Bahrain.
So we'll need to see how Perez kind of copes in the scenario where he is in one of the quicker cars at the front of the grid, when he's having to mix it up with Bottas, Verstappen, Hamilton, in and around the first corner, the first couple of laps. How is that going to play out? And we don't know yet because we haven't seen it. So
I mean, maybe
we'll have to wait and see.
Maybe that's what Bottas does so well. I mean, maybe in a sense, last week I think he knew he wasn't as quick, so perhaps he just went, well, as long as I just stay in the race, in a sense, don't really put any pressure on my tyres. If something happens, like a safety car, great, I can get onto a set of softs.
Yeah.
They might both, or even he might stay out. They both jump onto a set of softs. He gets ahead, and all of a sudden you've got 1-2 Mercedes, and maybe he lets Hamilton pass because it's an inevitability, and he's just trying to hold up Verstappen.
Yeah.
It's extra chips that you're playing with, and yeah, this is where it's going to be more important than ever that Red Bull get Perez to the front.
This is where the poo hits the fan, as they say.
Yes.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But then I guess it's not just necessarily Merc who have potentially increased performance. As in 3 weeks is a long time, but it's for every single team as well. I believe I read somewhere that Alpine have said that they've made significant upgrades to their car.
To be honest, I hadn't heard about this, but I guess they can't go backwards because that car was pretty poor.
No, that's true, yeah. As in, it had a bit of a stinker first time around. So, yeah, who knows? Perhaps they'll be a bit more competitive. And I guess this 3-week gap,
it's a reset moment, isn't it?
Yes, well, and like you think of Vettel, for example, as in, let's be fair, as debut races go, that's probably about as bad as it gets, really.
Yeah. Especially when you see some of the other guys. Carlos Sainz does well.
Sonoda
does well. So many of the guys who moved last season went, yeah, we're going to have a good start.
Well, like you had
bothering.
Sonoda had like an insane race. You had
Sonoda got 4 overtakes, didn't he?
Yeah, and as in like you had
Carlos Sainz, as you said, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Carlos Sainz, who, like, at the end of the race was basically saying, oh yeah, I was taking it a bit easy so I can get a bit used to the car. Yeah. Daniel Ricciardo had a solid first race for McLaren.
And Perez went from last to 5th.
Yeah.
Everyone else had a good race.
Vettel, meanwhile, languished, or, like, kind of had to change his tyres early, slowly dropped down the grid, and then rear-ended Ocon, and then blamed him for it when it was clearly Vettel's fault.
Racing Point have got to be kicking themselves after that.
Yeah.
So you can only hope for them and Vettel, because it would be nice to see Vettel closer to the front.
Of course it would.
What everybody wanted with him going from Ferrari to Racing Point. I mean, I think everybody knew long term that Ferrari was going to be better than Racing Point, but
who's Racing Point?
Oh, I keep saying Racing Point.
Thought it was Aston Martin.
Aston Martin, yeah.
I've never heard of Race Point. Who are you talking about? Have I said Renault instead of Alpine yet? I'm sure I probably have. When I was typing the notes, I typed Renault instead of Alpine. Multiple times.
Yeah, I haven't made the mistake on Renault Alpine. I think I'm over that one now. Yellow to blue's a lot easier, but yeah, pink to dark green seems to be 2 colours I'm confusing still. But
I just cannot comprehend this.
It's baffled me, it does. But
no, you're right.
Yeah, you want to see that at the front. You don't think that car's going to be as quick as the Ferrari. You assumed Ferrari at 7 point was going to catch up, but you just want to see Vettel doing well. I mean, he's 3 or 4-time world champion. 4-time world champion, Sebastian Vettel. But I mean, in a sense, everyone can accept that Fernando Alonso isn't going to be as quick as he was because he was retired. He's had his heyday. Same with Kimi Raikkonen.
Yeah.
But it's just the decline was so quick from Vettel that it would be nice to see him at the front again this weekend.
Well, the thing with Vettel is, and I'm not saying this is my opinion, but the longer it goes on, I feel like last season was a bit of an exception because clearly there was a breakdown in communications, but the longer it goes on, the more and more people who say, oh, Vettel only won his championships because of his car, the more and more they kind of creep in, and you think, oh, are they right though?
Yeah.
Because for example, that mistake,
doesn't it?
yeah, like is that mistake that Vettel makes? You rear ends Ocon.
You blame Ocon
and then it's
as
not
well.
Just,
there's no class
exactly,
in that.
and you're just kind of like, that's not like a 4-time world champion. That's not the sort of thing they generally do. As in, and he had that one a few seasons ago. I think it was at Silverstone where he did the same thing to Verstappen. He didn't blame him that time, to be fair, but as in, like, he just completely mistimed the braking and just ploughed right into the back of him. And you're like, oh, it's a 4-time world champion doing that. So, yeah, like you said, we want Vettel to kind of, he's had a 3-week break now. Put the first race behind him. That's in the past. Go again, and we'll see what happens. And hopefully Aston Martin can improve because they didn't have a great first outing.
No, they didn't. Speaking of the other teams that are sort of chasing Mercedes. Do you think
Yes.
McLaren or Ferrari can... I mean, are you assuming McLaren and Ferrari are teams 3 and 4 now in the sort of constructors race?
I would probably say so. Well,
I mean, you've got to check AlphaTauri because they've sort of that dark horse. You don't know what they're going to do. They're phenomenal first race, but that could just be a one-hit wonder. But in my opinion, they're 3-4.
I guess, yeah, for me, as in like McLaren, I kind of, I expected McLaren to be there just purely on the basis of they were getting Daniel Ricciardo in and then the Merc engine as well.
They're two great moves.
Yes. But for me, Ferrari, I was kind of surprised, really, and based purely on how awful this season was last year, I didn't really have much expectation for Ferrari this year. I always saw this season for Ferrari as just kind of just get through this season, ready for the reg changes next season.
Yeah, Ferrari are very much like, I was going to say like a Liverpool of old in a sense, where they were languishing for a season, but now they were, in a sense, you knew as soon as they got back to the top, they were there to stay for a little bit. You know what I mean? And that is definitely what's happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a podium is out of the question for McLaren or Ferrari. I think they're probably having to rely on something not going quite right at the front.
One of the front four has to not finish, firstly, and then they need to somehow hope that one of the others makes an accident.
But then, hey, who knows? As in, 3 weeks is a long time,
it is.
like we've said.
McLaren could be the new number 2 team. Mercedes could be bumped down to number 3.
Well, not necessarily number 2, but as in, all you got to think of is for...
Yeah, the gap was like 15 seconds last week.
Yeah, for McLaren, you've just got to get yourself within a pit stop.
Yeah.
And then, you're kind of going on to variations of how the car operates under the tyres, what's the track conditions like, is there going to be a safety car? And then there's lots of variables then. So you're kind of putting yourself in a good position. So, yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable. I think McLaren more so than Ferrari.
That's fair enough.
But Ferrari did... But as in, I think that's purely because Ferrari have had to come from a lot further back. I think if you're looking at terms of the jumps they've made from last season, Ferrari's jump from last season to where they were in the first race was...
It's a gulf.
Probably... Yes, it's huge. As in, like, Ferrari... Yeah. As in, like,
they weren't losing time on the straights at the very least.
Let's not forget, Ferrari, for the majority of last season, you were watching Sebastian Vettel fight with Kimi Räikkönen in Alfa Romeo.
A customer
those
team.
Were the kind of... Yeah, those were the kind of levels that we were looking at last season. So, yeah, Ferrari have made huge strides. And look, it's never a bad thing to have Ferrari closer to the front. As with McLaren, actually. But, McLaren have had a kind of a much slower decline and an equally slow rebuild, whereas Ferrari decided, let's just do it all in one season.
Yeah.
Let's just have an absolutely horrific season, and then next season we'll have a really good jump back.
That was sort of what we were saying pre-season, in a sense, was... Ferrari had a car 2 years ago which came second in the constructors, ahead of the Red Bull, which is now first. But in a sense, the only issue between that car and the car we saw last year was the engine. So all they had to do was fix the engine, and in a sense, they should have been back to where they were.
In and around.
And it looked, roughly, obviously. They were behind Mercedes at that stage, and if Mercedes are now behind, like in terms of the other aspects of the car, I mean, for a large part, I think Ferrari had the best engine, didn't they, for that 2 years? Obviously, because it was a slightly illegal car.
Yeah,
it was the fact that Mercedes were just outperforming them, weren't they, in all the other areas? And in a sense, as long as Ferrari can get those other areas right, as well as get that engine close to being as good, there's no reason to say they. Who knows, even next year could be one of the top 2 again.
Yeah. I mean, let's hope so. As in, it's always nice to have... next season's going to be the really interesting one. As in, when you have a regulation change, it always mixes the order up.
Well,
so we shall see what happens.
Last season, AlphaTauri had Kvyat up in 4th in this very race. Do you think they can repeat that again?
Well, I mean... In terms of...
Five drivers did retire last year, so maybe that helped, but...
Yeah, but as in terms of how, as in... AlphaTauri have got a really good setup. They've got Pierre Gasly, who seems to be settled and very racy. They've also got Yuki Tsunoda, who's come in and appears to be, like, what I would say is probably the best blend between race pace and maturity I've probably seen in a rookie. Like, let's not forget, as in, like, people rave about George Russell, Leclerc, Albon, Lando Norris. As in, that performance from Yuki Tsunoda last time round was, like, amazing.
Yeah. Just the right amount of
very
confidence.
impressive.
Not too much, not too little. It was just
confidence, not arrogance. Pace, but not rash. As in, like, so for AlphaTauri, you're probably looking at it and going, in terms of the kind of mid to lower teams, they're looking really good right now. And considering they're effectively a feeder team for Red Bull as well, like, it's very impressive. So I don't think it's... Again, I think we're kind of in the scenario where they'd probably have to rely on a few things to happen for that to materialise.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, who knows? As in, you
need the race to go your way. You need people to retire.
Yes.
I mean, and you've also got to be fortunate on the strategies. Like, the only reason they won a race last year was the basis that Gasly didn't pit. And then a red flag came out, and it was like, great, you're at the front. But
that's part of the sport, isn't it?
You've got to gamble. Like,
it's all about...
I'm pretty sure... Did Haas? No, it was Vettel. It was Vettel in the Aston Martin last race, where he just didn't pit for ages. I think they knew the race was gone for him after qualifying, when he qualified like 18th or something. It was like, you just got to gamble on those scenarios and go leave a car out there till the tyres are basically onto the metal. Hope something happens and go away with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just have to see what happens. But as in, it's not unreasonable. Who knows? AlphaTauri could be up there. And I did see some, just going off from that briefly, it's just popped into my head now. I saw somebody comment saying, can you imagine when Kimi Räikkönen and Mazepin do a pre-race press conference? Like, what are they going to talk about?
Like, one of them doesn't talk, and the other one will have nothing to talk about because he'll be out of the race.
And like, I saw a thing the other day, and it was things longer than Mazepin's Formula One race career.
I'm loving those.
And it was like Grosjean in the fire.
Massa's Formula One title before Hamilton.
There was another one as well that made me chuckle. It was a pit stop. It was a botched pit stop by Mercedes.
Oh, was it? Oh,
it was long. Yeah,
that's hilarious. Oh.
So,
I mean,
let's not even bother talking.
To be honest, for Mazepin, the only way is up, because it can't go much worse than last weekend.
Hey, if he gets to corner 3, it's an improvement.
No, he got to 5, didn't he? He got to,
did he?
Got to 5.
Good
effort. Yeah, it was at the end of the second straight, but I could see how was it?
No, I thought it was before that.
To be fair, it might be 3. It was only 15 seconds or so, wasn't it?
I think it was. As you get onto the, so you do the straight. You come to the first kind of like.
Yeah. You think he span off there? Do you?
Tight corner. No. He got around that corner, and then as you kind of come up to go towards the first DRS zone, I think he kind of span off there.
Actually, you might be right, because I remember thinking, oh no, it's like Grosjean's crash, because it was in the exact.
Yes.
It was on the other side of the track, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Turn 3. To be honest, though, I mean, I'm just going to scroll back up to the circuit for Imola. I mean, let's see where turn 1 actually is. What? There we go. Turn 1's on. He's got to make it past turn 3, because turn 4's right next to it. He can slide off the track and spin and still make it far enough, probably with momentum, to make it to turn 4.
There we are. Mazepin, 100% guaranteed. Well, unless his car breaks down on the grid.
We can only hope he makes it to turn
4. There we are. Right, should we do our... Well, actually, before we do our race predictions, should we have a look at what we said last summer round?
Yeah. To be honest, I had to listen back to the old podcast to check what they were, because just to double check that I had them right. And I pretty much, the ones which I thought I was rooting for, I wasn't rooting for. I thought the ones I knew was I put winner Verstappen, pole position Verstappen. And I thought, for my overtakes, I thought I'd put Gasly.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought I put Gasly, but apparently I put Norris, and I'm quite glad of that, because Gasly lost something like 15 positions, but Norris gained 3, so I'm a net of 18 from that. But
nice.
You put your winner as Danny Rick last week.
Yeah, that was more of an outside shot, in all honesty.
I put Verstappen, and I feel swindled. But I was
closer because I had a Merc.
Well, I think I was closer because mine came second. But we can argue that one back and forth. For pole position, though, I was correct because I had Verstappen, which was good. I'd be honest. I've been putting in my head. I had 5 points if you got either of those right, in a sense. So 5 points if you get the winner correct. 5 points if you get a pole position.
What you can't see here, guys, is that conveniently means that Jack has earned more points
To be
than
honest,
me
I'd have been at least
because he's just edited that as we're talking on the document, and before that I was ahead, and then he's like, I think that should be 5, and now all of a sudden he's jumped ahead.
It had to be with something, and it would got me at least equal. I think if you get either of those right, it's 5 points, and then you just get the number of points.
I reckon you should get 10 points per overtake.
Wow, for the overtakes, I was thinking, do you want to do it every overtake is a point, or every lost overtake is a minus point, or do you want to net it for the entire season, and it's worth 50 points at the end? That could be more entertaining. Well, it is more complicated. I mean, up to you.
I would say
we could just keep a rolling tally each week.
We'll just keep a rolling tally each week because that's going to get mega complicated otherwise.
But yeah.
So yeah, just to clarify, so I had the winner last time around as Danny Rick. You had Verstappen.
Both of us incorrect.
For pole, both of us wrong. I had pole Bottas. You had pole Verstappen, and Verstappen was indeed on pole.
There's my 5 points.
Those conveniently appearing 5 points. I had most overtakes as Yuki Tsunoda,
which was a cracking shout because he had the most of the weekend.
It was a good shout. I knew it, mate. I don't make this up on the spot. No. This is based on knowledge.
Lots of thought put into that.
Which is why I said Daniel Ricciardo would win. Jack, you said Lando Norris,
which got 3, surprisingly.
Not bad. Not bad
considering he started 7th.
Yeah, definitely.
It's going to be hard to obtain.
Going on to this race then. Who are you saying is going to win?
I'm going to go Verstappen. I'll be honest, I'm ride or die with Verstappen for this season. I said at the beginning of the season.
You're a Verstappen fan. I would never have guessed.
Well, to be honest, I'm more of a Leclerc fan, but he's doing nothing in the Ferrari. So this year I'm rooting Verstappen. Anyone but Mercedes.
Okay.
But I said at the beginning of the season I thought Verstappen's going to win the whole thing. So I kind of have to go ride or die with him at this stage. But yeah, I've gone Verstappen for my winner.
My thinking is I've gone with Mercedes. I've gone for Hamilton.
Gosh.
And my logic behind that is that
it's going to be a safety car.
Red Bull did everything, or Verstappen in the Red Bull did everything he possibly could have done last race and didn't win.
I'll be honest,
I think Mercedes are only going to catch up.
I think the opportunities for Mercedes to take advantage there, which is basically the pit stops, aren't going to be as apparent, I don't think, this week. Because I think there'll be one pit stop, which everyone will want to take. And then I think people will only take a second if something like a safety car comes out. And I'll be honest, usually, what's been the usual story of Red Bull is that they are the better strategic team. They had to be, because they were the team behind. But I think, firstly, Red Bull can rectify the gap, in a sense, and be the better strategic team. But also, I think there won't be the opportunities for Hamilton and Mercedes to take those advantages this week.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to say for pole, I'm going to say Verstappen.
And I've joined you on that. Ride or die.
I tell you what we could do, which would make it interesting. You could say that you're not allowed to say one of the people.
Oh, for both?
For multiple.
Okay, so
you couldn't say Verstappen for winner and pole.
All right.
But, actually saying that, though, that's probably not fair, because you're probably knowing that... Yeah, let's be fair.
Yeah. Well, they're worth the same amount of points, so you're just taking a gamble.
It's probably going to be Verstappen on pole.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. If it's not Verstappen, it's Hamilton, so you're just going to gamble on the other one. So it's it's 5 points.
Just copy and paste the same thing for each week.
Absolutely.
So I said Verstappen on pole, and you have also said Verstappen on pole. So there's not much really to talk about there.
Overtakes is where the gains are going to be made this season.
And I'm sticking with my boy Yuki Tsunoda.
To be fair, that's a really good shout. I don't know if he's going to qualify as low as he did. And I don't think he's going to be... in a sense, he did very well. I think he had a car which helped him get those 4 overtakes last week, to some degree.
Yeah.
And I don't think he, as a driver, is bad enough to not finish in Q1 this week with how good that car is. I think he was just unexperienced, which is the only reason he didn't make it last week. But I think it's going to be Pierre Gasly. I do think Pierre Gasly might qualify too far forward to see big gains on my overtaking points.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, I think he's definitely one of the drivers.
AlphaTauri are racy. Yeah.
I can't envision McLaren qualifying low. Ferrari could, but I don't know if they've got the pace to catch up. And I don't trust any other team to go forward rather than backwards. So that's why I'm going with Gasly.
Fair enough. There's good deductions there.
Thank you. Lots of thought.
Right. That's it, isn't it?
That's the end of our podcast. Much more refined. We're almost at an hour. Isn't that beautiful? We're doing 1 hour podcast now. People will find that much more manageable.
That's true. People will find that much more manageable. And am I right in saying that we've got one race after the other now? So we've got this week, and then
so that means next week is probably going to be about an hour and a half then, because it's going to have to cover two.
Well,
things
next week
in one, yeah.
we're gonna have to go back up to 2 hours.
A review and a preview.
Let's have a look. Let's have a look at the calendar.
Next one is Portimao, isn't it?
Oh, so we got a 2 week gap then. I'm guessing, is it?
It might be.
So it'll be another 1 hour podcast next week as well.
Hey, there we go. Lovely.
That's what I like. But yeah, we'll be back next week to talk about Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. Romagna.
Is it C?
No, Romagna. We'll be back to talk about Imola, and we'll see whether our predictions were right. And it'll be interesting to see, will Mercedes catch up to Red Bull? We shall find out, because people, it's race week.
It is race week. I'm going to give this a go 1 sec. Formula 1, Pirelli, Gran Premio del Made, not Del Made in Italy, Della Emilia Romagna 2021. What a mouthful. I love that. I went
on that note,
Demale. It's like, no, it's made. It's just made.
On that note, we are on Spotify. We are on YouTube. Why not give us a follow and subscribe while you're there? We're also on Anchor, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Breaker. So join us again next week. Oh, Apple Podcasts. See, week off and I forget them. We'll be back next week to talk about Imola. So, speak to you soon.